My weresnake boyfriend had been avoiding me on base for 6 months. Then one day, my younger brother told him, "My sister's getting married, officer. I need to go home." That same night, my boyfriend showed up at my door. Something about him felt different. The cold, distant man I knew was gone. In his place was someone dangerously charming. I didn't understand why, until I overheard him on the phone behind my back. "We never broke up. How is she marrying someone else?" "What do you mean I'm a shameless homewrecker?" "I'm just taking back what belongs to me." Then his voice dropped into a low laugh. "I'll prove to her husband that a lover will always be more tempting than a wife." I admitted it. I'd always been driven by physical attraction. From the second Vincent Rowley and I started dating, all I could think about was sleeping with him. I prided myself on being pretty creative when it came to sex, too. I even joined an online forum for fresh ideas and eventually ordered a massive box of sex toys and gear. When the delivery arrived, Vincent looked up. His pale amber snake eyes were icy, stripping every ounce of emotion from his handsome face. He stared at the heavy case in my hands for a long moment before asking, "Are you a mechanic now?" I was completely speechless. "You know what? Our washing machine just broke," he added. "You can practice on that." Rolling my eyes, I vented about the whole disaster in my online group, asking where I'd gone wrong. The admin gave me a brutally blunt reply. "He thinks you lack style. If you want to use that kind of gear, you need to work on your personal elegance first." And just like that, I was permanently banned. The removal notice read, "Tacky people are not welcome here." That day, I locked myself in the bathroom and cried for 2 straight hours. Lowering my expectations significantly, I bought a simple leather collar and brought it home. Vincent stared at it with those same icy eyes, his expression more severe than I had ever seen it. Beasts will never be slaves. My enthusiasm tanked. I totally gave up on trying to be adventurous in bed. Instead, I found myself just staring at Vincent's black military uniform. As a weresnake, he carried a refined, mysterious presence that made it impossible to look away. The dark fabric clung to his broad shoulders and narrow waist, giving his handsome features an undeniable air of strict self-discipline. Naturally, my mind wandered right back to the gutter. "That uniform looks really good on you," I told him shyly. "You should wear it home tonight." Vincent glanced down at himself, considered it for a moment, then nodded. True to his word, he came home that evening in full uniform. But he also brought back a stack of heavy military coats and shoved them into my arms. "If you like the style so much, you can wear these," he said, sounding almost thoughtful. "I specifically requested them from the quartermaster. Try them on. If they don't fit, I can exchange them for your size." I just stared at him, completely at a loss for words. That very day, I told him I wanted to break up. Vincent looked at me, his expression dark and heavy. He didn't agree, but he didn't try to talk me out of it either. Before walking out, he just gave me a stiff reply. "I'll give you some time to cool off. Come find me when you're thinking clearly." With that, he headed back to base. He was aloof and proud. It was impossible for him to bend first. For the next 6 months, he never contacted me. I tried to move on, but at night, lying alone in bed, I still found myself thinking about his abs. Just remembering his body was enough to make me drool. Right then, the doorbell rang. Figuring it was the takeout I'd ordered, I got up to answer it. The moment I opened the door, I froze. Vincent was standing on the porch in a long black trench coat, looking down at me. He towered over me by more than a head, his presence overwhelming, the sharp, icy scent of his cologne instantly filling the air between us. Had he finally come back to apologize? Was he done with the silent treatment? A massive wave of relief washed over me. But before I could even step forward to forgive him, he walked straight past me and into the apartment. Without even making eye contact, he said, "I'm not here to see you." Vincent walked over to where Kenneth was sitting on the sofa. The second Kenneth saw him, he froze, absolutely paralyzed with fear. In mixed families of humans and werebeasts, the kids might turn out entirely human, or they might not. We were living proof of that. I was human, but Kenneth was a were-dog. A were-husky, to be exact. Our family had lied on his paperwork to get him into the military academy, claiming he was a werewolf. He got in just like they wanted, but while the actual werewolves were howling, all Kenneth could manage was a bark. He fell miserably behind the others in physical training and cried every time he called home. A few days ago, he'd shown up out of nowhere, dragging his suitcase behind him. When I asked him what he was doing back, he just rubbed his nose and wouldn't look me in the eye. I messed up my knee, he'd lied. The academy sent me home to recover. Now, I looked back and forth between the two men. How on earth did Kenneth know Vincent? Kenneth looked utterly blindsided by the visit. Colonel Rowley, he stammered. What are you doing here? I was in the area for a mission, Vincent said, his voice completely level, and I figured I'd check in on your leave of absence. All the color drained from Kenneth's face, and he broke into a cold sweat. He shot me a guilty look before quietly pulling Vincent aside. Right on cue, my takeout arrived. I took it into the dining room to eat, giving them space. They deliberately kept their voices hushed to shut me out of the conversation. Vincent pulled out a small notepad. You requested leave because your sister was getting married, he said, dropping into a strictly professional tone. What was the date of the wedding? Kenneth was so on edge that he was stuttering. Is that really relevant? Vincent gave a solemn nod. Yes. The academy requires verification. The day before yesterday, Kenneth told him. Vincent fired off the next round of questions without missing a beat. What is your brother-in-law's name? Where does he work? How did he and your sister meet? How long were they dating before they got married? What's their relationship like, and what kind of man is he? Kenneth looked incredibly anxious and deeply uncomfortable. Isn't that crossing a line into my personal life? Does the academy actually dig into all that? Vincent nodded solemnly again. Yes, they do. I don't really know much about all that stuff. Vincent snapped the notepad shut. When he spoke again, his tone was sharp. In that case, the academy has every right to question the legitimacy of your leave and determine the appropriate disciplinary action. Kenneth looked absolutely terrified. Glancing over at me as I ate my takeout, something suddenly seemed to click in his head. He raised his voice and shouted, Liv, did Emmy order dinner for you again? Vincent instantly snapped his attention to me. The heavy weight of his stare hit me like physical pressure, and my appetite vanished. I gave a stiff nod and glued my eyes to my food. I had worked late today, and to make up for it, my boss, Emmett Hertford, had paid for my dinner. Kenneth zeroed in on my meal, laying it on thick. Emmy is so good to you. He got all your favorites. Vincent just watched me, utterly silent. His intense gaze made my skin crawl with discomfort. Finally, he looked away and slipped the notepad and pen back into his pocket. He stood up to leave. Kenneth trailed right behind him, falling over himself to be accommodating and submissive. Colonel Rowley, are you heading out already? Vincent let out a curt grunt of acknowledgement. I've found out everything I need to know. His voice was deadpan, but I caught the faint, unmistakable edge of anger. He strode right out the front door without so much as a backward glance in my direction. I just kept my head down and forced myself to keep eating. Beside my plate, my phone chimed. 2 new texts from Emmett. You left your coat in my car. I'm downstairs at your place. Come get it. I scowled at the screen. It was already late, and the absolute last thing I wanted to do was go back outside. I'm not home, I texted back, opting for the easy lie. Just bring it to the office tomorrow. The text thread went dead for a moment. Then a photo popped up, a picture of a trash can. I can let the trash can hold on to it for you. Jerk. I threw on a jacket and rushed downstairs, cursing Emmett in my head with every step. A flashy convertible was parked downstairs, and inside, that flamboyant werfox was lounging lazily, waiting for me. I snatched my jacket from him. We're going to see each other at work tomorrow anyway, I complained. Why go out of your way to drop this off? Emmett flashed a casual smile, his eyes crinkling in that way that made him look gentle and deeply affectionate. I'm heading to a bar later. If I end up driving a girl home, I can't have a woman's jacket sitting in my car, can I? It'd look like someone was staking their claim. Grossed out, I shot him a look reserved for absolute idiots. Spotting the two bulky packets of sauce stuffed into his pockets, I just rolled my eyes, completely speechless. Emmett was obsessed with the chicken pies and roasted drumsticks at a new bar on the west side of town. If the place were open during the day, he would eat all three of his meals there. His routine was always the same. Walk in, find a corner, pull out his two massive sauce packets, order a drumstick, a chicken pie, and 10 eggs, and devour everything before heading home. When he burped and smelled like a literal poultry farm, what girl was actually going to want to talk to him? He was my cousin. When I was little, I always assumed he was a wereweasel. It wasn't until I experienced his incredibly shameless personality firsthand that I finally stopped questioning his actual species. People always said werebeasts held onto some of the natural instincts of their animal forms. Emmett, being a werefox, was overly flirtatious. Kenneth, a were-dog, was a bit dim. And supposedly, weresnakes were naturally lustful. So, why was Vincent always so cold and aloof? I glared at Emmett, grabbed my jacket, and turned to head back upstairs. The second I turned around, I spotted Vincent. He was sitting in his car, his eyes meeting mine right through the windshield. Vincent just stared at me for a split second before indifferently looking away, as if his gaze had only landed on me by total accident. He started the engine and drove off without a single backward glance. He was so distant tonight, treating me like a complete stranger. Did this mean we were broken up? I couldn't stop dwelling on it. I went back upstairs, ate dinner, and took a shower, entirely distracted the whole time. I climbed into bed, but the second I closed my eyes, my phone rang. Hello, is this a relative of Mr. Emmett Hertford? I'm calling from the Werebeast Detention Center. I drove out to the detention center in the middle of the night. The entire way there, I angrily cursed out Emmett and his whole family line. When I arrived, the staff told me they'd arrested Emmett at the bar. Apparently, he was involved in a very serious criminal case. I stared at them in total confusion. What kind of serious case could he possibly be mixed up in? Did he eat 2 chicken pies but only pay for one? The guy worked hard just so he could afford to buy as much chicken as he wanted.
What was criminal about that?
Emmett's parents were rarely home, which was why the detention center had called me. I waited out there for a long time without catching a single glimpse of him. Just as my anxiety was hitting its peak, I saw Vincent. A Werebeast police officer was standing beside him, talking to him. I suddenly remembered Vincent mentioning back at my house that he was in the area for a mission. "Vincent," I called out. He paused slightly. Waving at the officer next to him, he signaled for the man to leave. I hurried over, my anxiety spilling out. "Did you arrest a werefox named Emmett Hertford tonight? Can I go see him?" Vincent stared at me. "That's against the rules," he said sternly. Hoping to appease him, I said, "I won't cause you any trouble. Come on, we already know each other so well." Vincent's gaze shifted. He looked down at me and took a few deliberate steps in my direction. "I'm sorry, but it's been too long," he murmured, "and my memory of you isn't very clear." He reached out and boxed me in with his arms, stopping just inches from my body. The cold metal of his uniform pressed against me, sending a quick shiver down my spine. His fingertips lightly brushed the buttons at my collar. "Why don't you help me remember?" he coaxed, his voice low and gravelly, "exactly how well we know each other?" When Vincent leaned in to kiss the side of my neck, my mind went completely blank. The whole setup felt like a scene straight out of an adult movie. After 6 long months, I was finally getting the uniform role-play I'd been dying for. I felt totally lightheaded. Gone was his usual cold, rigid demeanor. Suddenly, Vincent seemed incredibly experienced. He'd parked his black Bentley in a narrow, deserted alleyway flanked by abandoned houses, their residents long gone. It was dead silent around us, save for the sound of his heavy breathing. I narrowed my eyes, looking up at him. "What's wrong?" I asked. I could tell he was hiding something. He hesitated. The rims of his eyes were red, and as he stared down at me, tears began to pool in them. I never expected to see that kind of sorrow and grievance in those usually icy eyes. "Olivia, is there anything you want to tell me?" he asked. What was I supposed to say? That I missed him a little? I opened my mouth, but Vincent kissed me before I could get a word out, silencing me. His deep, Raspy voice murmured right against my ear. Never mind.
Don't say it.
I don't want to hear it.
He paused.
Olivia, I'm going to take back the status that's rightfully mine. By the time we got back to the detention center, Emmett had already been released. The cops had shut down the bar pending an investigation into werebeast trafficking after a string of recent disappearances. Vincent happened to be in the area assisting the police with the case, which was why everyone at the bar that night had been hauled in for questioning. The syndicate confessed that their main tactic was spiking drinks to knock out their victims. They had actually targeted Emmett early in the night. Luckily, Emmett didn't drink. He'd hit the bar's minimum spend entirely on chicken drumsticks, even packing up the leftovers to take home. When Emmett found out, he went completely pale. He was endlessly grateful that Vincent had shown up in time to save his life. Stepping out of Vincent's car, my legs still felt weak. Vincent stayed close by my side, letting me lean on him. He was being unusually attentive today. After we'd finished up earlier, he had even helped me straighten my clothes. 2 of my shirt buttons were undone. When I reached to fasten them myself, he gently caught my hands to stop me. He adjusted my collar himself, then pulled a brand new necklace from his pocket and fastened it around my neck. It looks better this way, he murmured. The pendant held a massive gemstone. It was so incredibly eye-catching that it almost felt like he wanted to make sure everyone noticed it. My long hair spilled over my shoulders, only partially hiding the red mark on my neck. Anyone staring at the gem would easily spot the hickey. Vincent gave a faint smile, looking thoroughly satisfied with himself. Right now, though, Emmett was too focused on Vincent to notice the jewelry at all. He was crying, his nose running. Mr. Rowley, thank you so much. Vincent shook his head. I was just doing my job. You should be thanking Ms. Mullins. He turned to look at me, his words heavy with hidden meaning. Relieved to finally see a familiar face, Emmett completely broke down. He pulled me into a tight hug, sobbing loudly, his voice entirely hoarse. His breath smelled strongly of egg yolks, and I had to keep leaning back just to avoid it. Watching this, Vincent frowned slightly, his hand balling into a fist at his side. He stayed quiet for a long moment, ultimately saying nothing. Instead, he reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. You've been through a lot tonight. Go home and get some rest, he told me. My ears grew hot. I mumbled an agreement, nodding my head. Emmett stood up straight and made an earnest promise. Don't worry, Mr. Rowley. I'll take good care of her when we get back. Vincent gave me a faint smile, but there was something off about it, something that got under my skin. I'll leave her in your hands then, he said. He turned to go, and the second his back was toward us, his face hardened into a cold, sharp glare. Kenneth showed up not long after Vincent disappeared. He'd clearly jogged the whole way to the detention center. He let out a heavy, visible sigh of relief the moment he realized Vincent was gone. I thought you said you weren't coming? I asked. Kenneth had been a shell of himself ever since Vincent left my place earlier that evening, quiet, sluggish, and completely checked out. When the call came in from the detention center, I'd asked if he wanted to come along, but he'd just shaken his head and flat out refused. Now, he looked at me with a guilty expression, a bead of sweat tracing down his forehead. I just got worried about Emmy. He scanned the room, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Liv, did you see Colonel Rowley here? I nodded. I did. I watched Kenneth's breath hitch. His anxiety was spiking fast. Did you guys talk? We did, I said. Kenneth started to physically tremble. What did he say to you? I felt a hot flash of embarrassment as I remembered the suggestive things Vincent had said back in the car. Emmett stepped in front of me immediately, puffing out his chest. He talked about how dangerous it was to rescue us from those thugs, obviously. I gave a vague, noncommittal nod. Yeah, exactly. Seeing how calm I was, Kenneth finally relaxed, just a fraction. He tried to play it cool, asking with forced nonchalance. So, now that this is all wrapped up, is the colonel heading back to the base tomorrow? Emmett waved it off dismissively. There are a lot of moving parts to this thing. I heard he's still got loose ends to tie up, so he'll probably be sticking around town for a while. The relief vanished from Kenneth's face as quickly as it had come. His nerves were back in full force. He looked back and forth between me and Emmett, hesitating for a long beat, before he suddenly seemed to make up his mind. Right there in the middle of the street, he started throwing a flurry of military-style punches. Passers-by stopped to stare, giving him the crazy person look, but Emmett watched him with pure admiration. "Emmy, it's too dangerous for you to be out here alone. You should stay at my place." Kenneth patted his chest, trying to project some kind of strength despite his scrawny frame. "I'll protect you. I went to a military academy, you know." Emmett grabbed Kenneth's hands, clinging to him like a lifeline. He looked so moved that he was actually tearing up. It was a bizarre bonding moment. Two people finding comfort in their shared absurdity. "My safety is entirely in your hands," Emmett choked out. I stared up at the sky in disbelief and let out a long, slow sigh. Kenneth was weak as a kitten and couldn't fight his way out of a paper bag. On the way home, Kenneth stopped to buy a mountain of wedding decorations. "Are you getting married and didn't tell me?" I teased. The question hit a nerve. He went on the defensive instantly. "Who says you have to be getting married to buy this stuff? Liv, you're an educated person. How can you say something so ridiculous? These stand for happiness, good luck, and warding off danger. They represent hope. I bought them specifically to bring Emmy some luck." Kenneth glared at me, deeply offended, as if I'd just said something incredibly cruel. I shut my mouth. Whatever. He could do what he wanted. When we finally got back to the house, I went to the bathroom to wash up. By the time I came out, he had stripped my bed and replaced everything with a full wedding-themed set. A massive "Just Married" banner printed right across the middle was staring me in the face. Kenneth gave me an eager, fawning smile. "You're my sister. I couldn't just leave you out and play favorites with Emmy." Was there something actually wrong with him? Forget it.
He meant well.
Seriously, was he okay?
He meant well.
Was he losing it? I wrestled with myself for a long time before I finally swallowed my frustration. I chose to be patient, for the sake of what little family feeling I had left. I forced a smile and yanked the door open. "Leave." All right, I'm going." Kenneth scurried off, hugging an armful of decorations. When I woke up the next morning, I found the living room completely decked out in balloons and ribbons. I just stared. If we hung up a wedding portrait, the place would be a dead ringer for a bridal suite. But Kenneth had an airtight excuse for every last ribbon. No matter how hard I grilled him, his logic was infuriatingly sound. Emmett, gullible as always, immediately took Kenneth's side. Standing in the kitchen, cracking 10 eggs for a massive omelet, he announced, "It looks nice. The house feels more festive." He had somehow dug up a set of vintage wedding-themed pajamas. "Happy Newlyweds" was splashed across the chest, right next to a tacky, glaring cartoon of a bride and groom kissing. Those pajamas were literally older than I was. My parents bought them the year they got married. When Vincent showed up, the first thing he saw was our makeshift wedding reception. Next, he spotted Emmett putting away a 10-egg breakfast to rebuild his strength. Vincent shot him a look. "You seem to be recovering well," he noted dryly. I had to bite my tongue to keep from making a sarcastic crack about his successful delivery of a healthy, bouncing baby. Spotting Vincent, Kenneth immediately hurried over to kiss up. "Colonel Rowley, what brings you by today?" "Just came to check on our patient, and I brought a gift." He set the box he was carrying on the table. It was supposed to be a large box of health supplements, but the words beauty and skincare were stamped in massive, bold letters across the cardboard, right above the slogan. "Women love yourselves." Vincent shot me a quick glance, then looked away. I knew the brand. They exclusively made high-end women's skincare. He claimed he was here for the patient, but he'd obviously come to bring me a gift. A genuine wave of happiness washed over me. I reached out to grab it, but Emmett snatched it first. He spun around, clutching the pale pink box to his chest. "I feel so pampered," he announced.
I was speechless.
Vincent looked just as dumbfounded. Humming to himself, Emmett headed back into the kitchen. He whipped up a few more poached eggs and started on some scrambled eggs. Exasperated, I swatted his arm. "What are you eating all this for?" "Trying to produce breast milk," I demanded. I am a recovering patient, Emmett replied, completely deadpan. Vincent shot a brief look toward the kitchen before turning back and taking a seat next to Kenneth. How was your sister after your brother-in-law got home last night? He asked. Kenneth lied without missing a beat. My sister felt so bad for him. She stayed up late taking care of him, worried he'd be in pain. Vincent lowered his head a fraction. Are things going well between them? Kenneth nodded eagerly. They worked together for years and always got along. Their relationship has only gotten better since the wedding. Vincent pinched the bridge of his nose, his expression darkening. Did your sister ever mention another guy or an ex-boyfriend or anything like that? Kenneth covered his mouth to hide a smirk, acting like the ultimate authority on my personal life. My sister and my brother-in-law were each other's first loves. Vincent clearly couldn't stomach another word. He stood up without meeting anyone's eye. I have things to do.
I'm leaving, he announced.
Kenneth tagged right along behind him, playing the eager host. Colonel Rowley, I'll walk you out. That won't be necessary. Looking ice-cold, Vincent yanked the door shut with a loud bang. Kenneth just stood there, completely shut down. Hearing the racket, I came out of the kitchen, but Vincent was already gone. The door had slammed so hard it rattled my nerves. Did you make him mad? I asked Kenneth. Kenneth shook his head blankly, totally oblivious to whatever he'd said to piss the man off. My phone pinged. I pulled it out and saw a text from Vincent.
Come down.
I set my phone down and mumbled an excuse about needing to run downstairs and grab a package. The second I stepped out of the elevator, someone grabbed my arm and yanked me out of sight. Vincent pulled me in tight, kissing me so hard our teeth clashed. He bit my lower lip, hard enough to actually hurt, and the metallic taste of blood flooded my mouth. I scowled, fully prepared to tear into him, when a cold drop hit my cheek. Then another. They weren't my tears. I froze. Pushing him back, I looked up and saw his eyes swimming with tears. The anger drained right out of me. I reached up, brushing my thumb beneath his eye. Why are you crying? I asked, my voice softening. In the past, whenever he came back from a completed mission, no matter how chewed up or badly injured he was, I had never seen him shed a single tear. He opened his mouth like he was going to lash out, clearly wanting to pin the blame on me, but the words just wouldn't come. Instead, he dropped his forehead toward mine and whispered, I just feel a little sad. He swallowed hard. Did you even think about me at all these last 6 months? He asked, his voice raw. A second ago, my heart had been breaking for him, but hearing him actually bring up those 6 months brought the rage boiling right back to the surface. If you'd waited any longer, I would have already moved on and married someone else. I said it purely out of spite, but it landed like a gut punch. The tears he'd just managed to get under control started spilling down his face all over again.
I didn't try to comfort him this time.
I just gave him a dead-eyed stare. If two people don't talk for over a week, that means they're broken up. Did you honestly not know that? Vincent looked absolutely crushed. He shook his head slowly. Nobody ever told me that, he murmured, his voice cracking. I thought once we got together, we wouldn't ever break up. He hesitated, looking at me cautiously. Am I still your boyfriend? I wanted to tell him no just to hurt him back, but seeing him cry chipped away at my resolve. Yes. The second the word left my mouth, Vincent leaned in and kissed me again. Right at that moment, the elevator doors slid open behind me. Kenneth was standing there, holding a black trench coat. His face lit up when he saw Vincent. Colonel Rowley, your coat. He was obviously about to say Vincent had left it at my place, but the words died in his throat. Because Vincent had his arms wrapped around me, Kenneth could only see my back. But we'd spent so much time together over the years that he recognized me instantly. He just stood there, stunned, completely unable to process what he was looking at. Vincent glanced up, his expression totally calm as he met Kenneth's surprised stare. Kenneth sucked in a sharp breath. The door slowly slid shut in front of him, taking him up to the next floor. By the time Vincent finally let me go, Kenneth was already gone. I frowned, glancing over my shoulder at the empty space. Weird. I thought I just heard Kenny's voice. I muttered aloud. Vincent casually wiped a smear of lipstick off the corner of his mouth. No, you must have heard wrong. After saying my goodbyes to Vincent, I headed upstairs to my apartment. When I unlocked the door, I found Kenneth sitting in the living room. He looked entirely wrecked. Honestly, even more distraught than the time our parents strong-armed him into enrolling at the military academy. I stood in the doorway for a good long while before he finally registered that I was there. He stared at me with numb distress, looking completely defeated. He dragged a hand down his face, hesitating for a long, heavy moment before he found his voice. Liv, how did you get Emmett released early yesterday? The question immediately flashed my brain back to the absolutely ridiculous things that had happened in the car the night before. I felt my face go rigid and let out a forced cough to cover my guilt. I didn't do anything. Maybe the people at the detention center just felt sorry for him and decided to let him out early. I shifted my weight, wondering why on earth he was dredging up yesterday's events.
Why?
Is something wrong? Kenneth just shook his head, looking totally lost. No, it's nothing. He didn't move another muscle, just sat there on the sofa, perfectly still. I went back to my bedroom. Pulling out my phone, I scrolled mindlessly for a bit until a notification for a new forum post popped up. The title caught me totally off guard. My boss is into married women. It had gone up about 10 minutes earlier. The original poster seemed completely frantic, leaving comment after comment on their own thread. I respected him so much. Idolized him even. I never expected him to be such a massive hypocrite. It just goes to show that nobody's perfect. The more flawless someone seems on the outside, the more twisted they are behind closed doors. No wonder he's young, successful, and still single. VIPs try to set him up all the time, and he won't even look at the women they suggest. Turns out, he's only into other men's wives. I stared at the screen, totally floored. That was just completely messed up. Other users jumped into the thread, asking if the poster was just overthinking things. The OP replied to every single one, swearing they weren't crazy and had seen it happen with their own eyes. A family member of mine was played by him. The commenters were horrified. You could just feel the heartbreak in that one short sentence. The second he found out my relative was married, he showed up straight at our house, totally throwing his status out the window. Over the course of 2 days, he did some seriously inappropriate things. He abused his power and his position, using threats and bribes to seduce my relative. People in the thread were getting angry on the poster's behalf, urging them to fight back and protect their family. But the OP was hesitating. That guy is genuinely dangerous. If I out him for the creep he is, I'm terrified of the backlash I'll face. Someone replied, "At the very least, you need to make your relative cut off all contact with that scumbag." The poster caved. Thank you. I'll try. Right as I read that, there was a knock at my bedroom door. Liv, Kenneth called from the hallway. I need to talk to you about something. I set my phone down and opened the door. It was the first time I'd ever seen him look so dead serious. He sat down in the chair next to my bed, staring at me without even blinking. Liv, what exactly is your relationship with Vincent? So, I hadn't misheard him downstairs earlier. He really had seen us. His tone was so stern it killed any urge I had to play dumb. Left with no way out, I admitted, "We're dating." His face said he saw it coming, but he still reacted like he'd been slapped. "I don't approve of you two dating." He was being completely unreasonable today. "You aren't the one dating him. Nobody asked for your approval." Kenneth just stopped. Suddenly, huge tears started streaming down his face. I froze, completely stunned. What was going on with him? What had I even said to upset him that much? We'd traded way harsher words in the past, and I had never, ever seen him cry. He sobbed for a solid minute before finally wiping his face. "Vincent isn't a good guy. He's disgusting and sick. You shouldn't trust him so easily." The more he talked, the more lost I got. How exactly is he disgusting and sick? Kenneth stammered for a bit, totally unable to get a single word out. He wanted to tell me that Vincent liked married women. But for one thing, he didn't have any proof. After all, I was the only married woman he'd ever actually seen Vincent with. For another, he still didn't have the guts to admit that he'd used me as an excuse to get time off work. Looking even more miserable, he resorted to just making things up. Vincent is a cheater and a player. He just messes with people's feelings. He's completely unreliable. He kept crying the whole time he talked. Judging by the way he was acting, one would think he was the one who'd just been cheated on. Choking back his tears, he warned me, "Liv, you have to stay away from him." I gave him a hard, complicated look. "How do you know so much about his private love life?" Kenneth's face went rigid, and he completely shut down again. He always did this. The second he was faced with a tough question, he just clammed up. A messy cocktail of emotions washed over me. That nagging feeling that something was off, which had been eating at me ever since I saw Vincent again 6 months ago, finally clicked into place. No wonder he'd dragged himself all the way out here the second Kenneth got back. No wonder Kenneth knew him. No wonder Vincent suddenly had so many new tricks when it came to romance. My thoughts were absolute static. Kenneth and I just stared at each other in dead silence for what felt like forever. Finally, I let out a heavy sigh and patted his shoulder. "While you're home on break," I told him earnestly, "you need to practice your Kegel exercises." Kenneth looked utterly baffled. I couldn't let it go. Had sending Kenneth off to military school actually been the right move for our family? All it did was drop him right into an environment packed with guys who walked all over him. Could we have sent him to an all-girls school? Obviously not. They wouldn't have let him enroll, since he was a guy. Honestly, why were people even born with anatomy they weren't going to use? I was so frustrated that I literally jumped up and down on my bed. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Vincent. "Is Emmett asleep?" Emmett had carb-loaded so hard at dinner that he'd crashed early. I shot back. "He's been out for hours." Just the thought of Vincent made my blood boil, but the texts kept coming. "I want to see you." I stared at the screen, letting the words really sink in. After a long beat, I typed, "I'll come over to your place." I tossed my phone down and got up to leave. Kenneth was still out in the living room, looking incredibly stressed. Catching me heading out this late, he asked immediately, "Are you going to see Vincent?" I stopped dead in my tracks, glancing back at him with a helpless sigh. "Some things just need to be handled in person," I said. I shoved the front door open and stepped out into the night. Vincent's place wasn't a far walk. By the time I got there, he'd just stepped out of the shower. Water was still dripping from his hair, and he was wearing a bathrobe tied so loosely that the collar hung wide open, showing off his chest. A faint smile tugged at his lips when he saw me. Gone was the intense, untouchable vibe he carried around all day. Right now, he actually looked somewhat gentle. I looked away. "Vincent," I said, "we're ending this relationship right now." Vincent froze. His smile vanished, and the air in the room instantly went thick with tension. He looked dead serious and completely crushed. "Is it because of him?" he asked. "Kenneth?" I nodded. Vincent forced a sad, tight smile. "I don't mind. Obviously. Of course you don't mind. But I minded very much." Vincent took a step toward me, cutting off my path to the door. "Does he mind? It seems like he doesn't care about you nearly as much as you think." "Stop trying to sabotage our relationship," I snapped. "We're doing just fine." I was done listening. I shoved past him, making a beeline for the door. Walking out of there without insulting him was the absolute last shred of respect I had left to give. I'd barely cleared him when something snapped tight around my ankle. Something cold pressed against my skin, sliding slowly up my leg. I looked down, and pure panic spiked through my chest. The tail of a black snake had me in a vice grip, making it physically impossible to take another step. A pair of freezing hands reached out from behind, locking around my waist. Right before I lost consciousness in Vincent's arms, I felt him lean in close to my ear. "Liv, calm down," he murmured in a low, coaxing voice. "Think carefully about who loves you more, me or your husband." I had no idea how long I'd been out. When I finally dragged my eyes open, the room was pitch black. I fumbled around in the dark until my hand grazed my phone. The screen glared at me. It was well past midnight. The forum thread I'd been following earlier had a new update. I tapped the notification and saw the original poster venting again. What should I do? My sister went to see that guy again, and she's been gone forever. I'm so pissed. I want to call the cops, get him arrested, and see him severely punished. He deserves the maximum sentence under the law. Over and over again. I feel so overwhelmed, hopeless, and miserable. I'm just a normal person. Why do I have to deal with this? I don't even know where the guy lives. I'm terrified thinking about how scared and vulnerable my sister must be right now. The comments started rolling in immediately. Don't do this alone. Ask your brother-in-law to help you sort it out. Yeah, since it's an actual crime, you should report him to the police for forcing himself on a married woman. To which the poster replied, my sister is actually unmarried. Naturally, the commenters were confused. The poster elaborated. The marriage was a lie. It's a complicated situation, but she's currently single. Someone else chimed in. Well, the cops probably won't do anything then. You should just confront the guy yourself. I'll try calling him, the poster responded. I have to protect my sister. The poster's profile picture was a husky, which honestly just made their frantic panic look a little goofy. I rubbed my temples, deciding to call Kenneth so he'd know I was safe. I dialed his number, but got a busy signal. Surprised, I ended the call. I was alone in Vincent's bed. I got up to go look for him, pulling open the bedroom door. He was out on the balcony with his back to me, talking on his phone. The voice bleeding through the receiver was instantly familiar. It was Kenneth. Liv is already married, and she's happy, Kenneth was saying. Why are you pulling this shady crap to ruin her marriage? Vincent snapped back. What do you mean, shady crap? We never broke up, so how could she marry someone else? I'm just taking back what's mine. I'll make sure her husband sees that she'd rather be with her lover than her actual spouse. Dead silence from Kenneth's end. I didn't say a word either. I just stepped up, snatched the phone right out of Vincent's hand, and asked, my voice ice cold. Kenneth, when exactly did I get married? Nothing. Just silence. I headed straight home. I sped the whole way, making the 20-minute drive in 10 flat. But by the time I walked through the door, Kenneth had already packed his bags and bailed. Later that night, he posted an update on social media, a photo of a plane ticket back to his college campus, captioned, I love going to school. I was so mad, I actually laughed. Vincent patted my shoulder. Don't worry, you still have me, he said. Kenneth was absolutely getting his ass kicked later. We had left his place in such a rush that Vincent was still wearing his bathrobe. Now that the dust had settled, I just wanted to move past my brother's sheer stupidity. Brushing past the earlier drama, I asked him calmly, So, why were you in such a rush to see me tonight? Vincent looked down, his voice dropping softly. I wanted to show you something. He tugged at the collar of his robe. Around his neck was a black leather choker with a tiny gold bell attached to it. I had bought one just like it a while ago, teasing him about wanting to see him wear it, but he'd thrown it in the trash. He must have gone out of his way to track down an exact replica. Any trace of his old hesitation was completely gone. After all, considering the wildly scandalous things he'd been ready to do earlier, this was nothing. Outside of a real relationship, acts like that crossed a line. But since we were officially together, it was just consensual role play. Vincent looked right at me, dead serious, and asked, Liv, do you want to hear me bark?
All right, class, today's lesson is simple. If your little brother starts buying wedding decorations, posting online about your husband, lying to your military boyfriend, and having emotional breakdowns every time you kiss someone, maybe stop asking questions and start checking his internet history. Also, never assume you're broken up with a weresnake just because he ignored you for 6 months. Apparently, in his head, that's called giving her space. If a man rescues your cousin from a criminal syndicate, cries over you, wears a collar you bought him, and asks if you want to hear him bark, congratulations, the relationship has officially entered the "there is no HR department for this situation" stage. If your cousin survives human trafficking because he spent the entire night eating chicken instead of drinking alcohol, that's not luck. That's what doctors call a high-protein survival strategy. And most importantly, communication is important. Because while normal couples break up after 6 months of silence, Vincent was out here like, We never broke up. I simply entered power-saving mode. So the true moral of the story is, talk to your partner, don't let your husky brother run your love life, and never underestimate a man whose entire personality is chicken drumsticks. Because one minute you're single, and the next minute your boyfriend is wearing a bell collar asking, "Liv, do you want to hear me bark?" Just know you've officially left the romance genre and entered a completely different section of the bookstore. Roll credits.